You're listening to Lighthouse Conversations, brought to you by Lighthouse Haven, a spiritual home for your awakening soul. Lighthouse Conversations is a show where awakening souls gather to be inspired, connected, and enlightened. Spiritual spark plug and host Chelly Canales, that's me, will guide you through the twists and turns of your journey to a safe haven where you are finally free to live your best light. Each episode contains a conversation with a guest who has gone through a spiritual awakening, detailing their unique and life-changing experiences in an intimate and candid way. Although everyone's experience is as unique as they are, we all share one common thread. We're all seeking something. So, come join us on this journey and be prepared to leave with resources that will supercharge you into inspired action. Here's today's episode. Hello, awakening souls. Gosh, it's been a little bit since I've checked in with you. I've taken some self-care time. I needed to recalibrate, recover, get my energy back. I've been in a space where I'm trying not to push and force, but to allow and to let things flow in a way where they come through at the right time, with the right energy behind it. I have such wonderful interviews to share with you, some incredible guests, starting today with Alexandria Thibodeaux, who is pretty fantastic, and she really speaks to my soul. She not so much individual coaches, but she works with and speaks about highly sensitive people and how that affects the way that life is experienced. And I'm one of those people as well as an empath. And so having the right terminology and the right support makes such a difference. So we learn about how to kind of function by having this quality of experiencing the world. And we also talk about how Alexandria's experience being raised as a white woman, even though she discovered later she's actually Black, has affected her self-perception and her journey and her path and what it means to unravel all of these layers of who she thought she was, but then coming into who she truly is. So this is a really powerful conversation, and I'm just, so humbled by how honest and real my guest is with me today, and I hope you take a listen and welcome back. And I look forward to touching base with you a lot more coming up here soon. Thanks again. And welcome to the show, Alexandria. How are you?
I am doing so well. Thank you so much for offering me this abundant opportunity to share my story with you and your audience. I'm so excited about it.
I'm so happy you're here. Your story is incredible, and you have so much to share for others who are building their own story, creating their own journey, and I love how you help them. So you are a coach and a writer and a speaker, and you specialize in highly sensitive people, which, hello, I am, and I didn't know that for a long time. So it's really incredible to know that there's someone out there holding the space for people on that journey. Tell me about your journey to getting here.
Sure. Well, I have always known that I am a deeply sensitive person. I've always had that awareness about myself based on how I react to the world, respond to things, how I process things. And I didn't realize I am what is called a highly sensitive person, or an HSP, until later in my life. I discovered this about, how long ago? It's about two and a half years ago, actually. It was a fairly recent-ish discovery. And I discovered this because I was having a very difficult time finding an aligned career, finding jobs that were aligned. And I kept hopping from job to job, industry to industry. And I was very unsatisfied, deeply unsatisfied. I mean, within my physical body, I was in pain. I was suffering mentally. It was just so horribly exhausting and crippling and extremely frustrating. And I did this for years, just being miserable and doing everything right on paper, climbing the corporate ladder, making more money, gaining more influence and prestige. But I was miserable and I felt stuck. I was like, I have to stay here. I don't have experience in other things. I just have to be miserable. And one day I was on the phone with one of my friends, and I had just quit my 100th job. I lasted 2 weeks and I couldn't handle it. And it was a job at a staffing agency, and I needed a job. My husband and I had just recently moved to Denver from St. Louis. And it's like, I told myself I'm never going to get a traditional job again after I quit corporate. And then financial panic ensued once we moved here. And I'm like, well, what do I do? And I lasted 2 weeks. I cried on the way home from the interview because I did not want the job. Yes. And lasted 2 weeks, had a breakdown and quit. And I was on the phone with my friend. I said, what's wrong with me? I was like, no one seems to actually like their jobs. Everyone seems to kind of hate their job, but people find a way to just deal with it. They find a way to manage. They find a way to push through. They find positivity in it somehow. I have tried so many different things. I've really sacrificed, and I cannot get over this mentally. I cannot. It's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I don't want to work. It's not that I don't want to contribute. I feel like I'm drowning in everything I'm doing. I'm crazy. And she said, "You're not crazy.
You are not.
You're just highly sensitive." And when she said this, I was like, wait a minute. Sensitive, I know. I've known this about myself. But when you say highly sensitive, that deeply resonated. And I was like, I think this has to be something different. So I consulted the oracle, that is Google, and learned, oh my God, this in fact is a very real thing. This is a physiological genetic trait that affects 15 to 20% of the world population, including non-human animals. And there's barely any awareness about it. And so when I learned this about myself, it was the most grand epiphany. I felt so validated and affirmed in who I am, in how I see and process the world, and how I think and feel. It all made sense, and it was so freaking empowering.
Yes, I resonate with that so much. And so now that you figured that out about yourself, you're like, oh my God, there's others out there like me. They need my help.
Yes. They
Tell
do.
me about
I'm
that.
here. Yes, absolutely. So the second I realized this about myself, it was so shocking, not just because I finally learned something I didn't know. It was so shocking because I hadn't heard of this before. Everyone's heard of an introvert. Everyone's heard of empaths. But like people aren't super familiar with this terminology. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, wait, why? Like I've been to therapy. I've been to different therapists. My bachelor's is in psychology. Like, why hasn't this been in my awareness? And it really shook me. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create that awareness and that change because I'm going on 28 years not knowing this.
Mm-hmm.
When my parents raised me, they were not aware that they had a highly sensitive child who viewed and processed the world totally differently than 85% of the rest of the world. There are teachers who are unfamiliar with this. They're unfamiliar with this temperament in students in their classroom. And especially in the workplace, it is becoming more and more difficult for we HSPs to thrive in our traditional roles that we innately fit. Dr. Elaine Aron, she's the psychologist who discovered and coined the term highly sensitive person in 1991. Incidentally, when I was born, I like to say her intuition was on point. She knew I was coming. And she was like, this girl's going to need an explanation. So she has several books that she has written. Her most famous one is The Highly Sensitive Person. And she so beautifully describes us. She says, in every aggressive society, which America is a very aggressive society, there's going to be two major groups. There's going to be the warrior kings and there's going to be the royal advisors. So, back in the day when we had monarchies ruling everything, there was a king who ruled, but there was always, I shouldn't say but, and there was always an advisor at their side to make sure that they were able to see all the consequences of ideas and plans, to make sure that they were looking at everything from a holistic point of view, to make sure that the community was seen and heard, to make sure that they were prioritizing the right things, because they're able to see and feel things that the aggressive, power-hungry, power-driven king cannot see. And so today, in today's society, many of us HSPs innately fit into these roles as teachers, as clergy, as poets, as artists, as activists, healers, as coaches, as therapists, and the list goes on. People like Mr. Rogers has changed the world. That was a highly sensitive man.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to thrive in those roles because our society becomes even more competitive, more aggressive, more dismissive of those who are sensitive, especially in Western culture. Extroverted, bold people are favored over cautious, critically thinking, sensitive people. And that has to change. And I really want to help further that movement of change.
You are changing the world. So like me as a child, I wish I could have had what you were offering because I'm an empath and highly sensitive. And, 91 was when I moved from Texas to Colorado. And it was a huge shift for me. And suddenly I realized I'm not like everybody else. What's going on here? Why do I feel too much? Why is everything so overwhelming?
You feel it,
you know it. And it's also other people's emotions that I'm taking on. And there's also just like, if I'm in the department store and two different songs are playing at the same time, like my brain can't handle it. Like I start sweating. I'm like, get me out of here. Get me out of here. It's like sensitive in my senses, sensitive in my soul. And so just learning the terminology was enough to start shifting my life to understand how to exist in a way that's like, I'm not wrong. I just process things differently. So I'm so thankful to people like you who are doing the work. And I feel like, I don't know about you, but I run into this imposter syndrome sometimes, like, I haven't had all of the certifications and I haven't had 20 years of experience, so I'm not allowed to help people. It's like, of course, you've been through this. You are going through this. You are uniquely qualified to be a guide in this journey. And we're going to have more people like you popping up as this era continues. This is my belief that people like us are tasked with being in those roles and working our way towards like awareness to the greater society so that people can say like, okay, like you do you, I'll do me. Let's still look out for each other and understand that there's nothing wrong with this. It feels so freeing to be able to be understood.
Oh God, there's no better feeling than feeling understood, because it truly makes you feel seen and heard. It truly makes you feel embraced in your full humanity. There's no better feeling.
And that's what we need more of, full like embodiment, being a part of humanity. Because for me, as a highly sensitive person and an empath, I tend to want to jump out of my body and look at everything from up here and not be existing down here. It's like, that's too hard. So it's like learning how to make peace with how you are and getting the right tools to do that. And what would you, maybe like not a full session here, but just like a couple of bits of advice you might present to someone who's like, okay, I really resonate with highly sensitive person. What are some like a couple things I can do during the day to get myself in a place where I can function well?
That's such a great question. Thank you for asking. And this is really great. So the number one thing that is necessary when acknowledging, accepting, celebrating, and championing your sensitivity is to really build a foundation of understanding for it. And so what we have to do is just be aware, just be mindful. Be mindful of how your physical body reacts to certain situations. I love to give this example because it affects me very strongly. Light. Light affects me on not just a physiological level, on a mental level as well. If it's too bright, it's going to affect my mood and I'm going to either be depressed or I'm going to be agitated. If it's not bright enough, same thing. I am constantly tinkering with the light in my home all day, every day.
I cannot sleep with any light on at all. Like if there's a clock, I have to cover it with those
It's a great example. That's perfect. You get it. You so get it.
Totally get it.
Whether it's the blinds, whether it's actual lights, whether it's candles, I move candles in different corners of the room. I have dimmers on all the lights. And it's those things like that, little things that we may not necessarily give attention to normally, but we're still aware of it. So if you're sitting there, if you're in your house and you're working and you notice, what, I'm squinting. Why am I squinting? Like, this is uncomfortable. Is it because the light is too bright? Is it because there's something irritating you? Is there a faucet dripping and you're noticing, ooh, wait, that's actually really irritating me? Or are you wearing a scarf or a necklace and you can't stop fidgeting with it? You need to pay attention to those things instead of just saying, whatever, it's fine. Actually stop and take in that feeling and then take action to bring yourself peace. So often we don't do those things. We're just rushing, moving. Like, even the most basic things like washing your hands can be a very delightful and intentional sensory experience. I mean, personally, I enjoy the feeling of the bubbles in my hands. It feels nice. It feels pleasant. It gives me a moment to just kind of play in the soap and have like a lovely sensory experience. It's things like that. Take notice. Or even if you wash your hands and the soap smells really good, actually take some time to really take that scent in. It's about understanding your body and understanding why it reacts and why it responds the way it does. And we just have to prioritize being aware instead of brushing off the feeling or brushing off the thought.
Yeah, it takes more energy to just be like, oh, I'm going to ignore that. Oh, it still bothers me. Take off the necklace. Just take off the necklace. There's certain things we just don't even give ourselves permission to do or don't realize how easy it is to just take that piece of it out of it. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. And so you can also turn it into something really positive. Like you said, enjoy the highly sensitive qualities of your soul. Wash your hands, smell it. Like that's a beautiful experience. Give your senses something that they enjoy,
Oh,
that you can
yes.
enjoy on a greater level because you do have that extra sensory thing. Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
a big part of your journey and your awakening is this work. There's another part that I was, really interested to hear about. So you've spent most of your life unaware that you were actually a Black woman.
Yeah, it's wild.
Tell me about that.
Okay. So I just turned 30. I turned 30 on February 25th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'm going to say for the first 26 years of my life, I was raised to believe that I am white. I am, in fact, Black. I am a Creole. Essentially, what that means is I am a mix of Black, European, and Native American, possibly Caribbean. That's not in my lineage, but Caribbean is part of the Creole family. So for me, European, Black, and Native American, and a bunch of other stuff. And Creoles originate in the Louisiana area, which is where my parents are from. They are both from Southern Louisiana. I am not. I am from the complete opposite of that. I am from Naperville, Illinois, which is in the Midwest, not the South. There are no people of color, and no diversity whatsoever. And both my parents are Creoles too, so they're both Black. And a lot of people are like, well, why are you so light? Creoles are light because there's a lot of European mixed in, and that's literally because of slavery. I mean, the reason I have this complexion is because there was so much colonization. That is literally why. And a lot of people like to mistake me for being biracial or mixed. I'm not. I'm full Black.
Right.
And my parents raised me to believe we are French, we are Spanish, and Native American, nothing else, and absolutely not Black. And they raised me to demonize Black people and Black culture. They literally raised me to be racist. And I was against myself without even knowing it.
Wow.
And I grew up, in Naperville, Illinois, like everyone is white. And I knew I was different because my eyes do work. And I could see like, okay, like I am not the same color. My hair is different. And at the same time, even though I had, what's the word? I had obvious awareness of that. I didn't internalize it. I was just kind of like, well, whatever. And when I would ask my parents, well, why? Why are we tanner? Why do we have this hair? It was always a lie. It was like, oh, well, what did they even say? They were like, that's the French. I'm like, France is a European country.
Right,
like,
right.
What? But as a child, you're just like, okay, whatever. And we would frequently visit our family in Louisiana, who are Black people. And they have also married Black people who are of darker complexion. And whenever we would go visit, my parents would curate how I would view certain family members, how much attention I should give them. And, looking at it in hindsight, it's like, yeah, like they would say things like, oh, they're not our family. Like they're Black. They're not actually our family. They're just our family because our family married them. So don't get it twisted and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like Black people, they're less like they have all these issues. They want to be on welfare. Like I had completely ignorant, horrible thought. And then I met my husband, who is very white, and he's very white. And when he started dating me, he knew I was Black. Everyone has known I'm Black except me. Like literally everyone has known but me. And he knew, but he didn't push it because I was weird about it. And he was like, this is not okay. Like this needs to stop. Like you're racist and this is unacceptable. This has to stop. So he fixed me at the ripe age of 20. Then at 26, my parents did ancestry.com.
Okay.
And both their results came significant African descent, which is not shocking, or it shouldn't be. They're from Louisiana. We're Creole Cajun people. Like what? And I was like, so what does this mean, parents? Pretty sure that means we're Black. And they were like, no. My mom was like, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. It's just a suggestion. I said, excuse me, what? That's not how a DNA test works. What? She doesn't know what to say. So my dad jumps in and he's like, well, here's the thing. Because we're mostly white, which is true just by a little bit. It's nearly 50-50. He's like, because we're mostly white, it could just mean that that our ancestry is from the European countries and these are the African countries and nations that they colonized. And I was just like, you created this whole fabrication.
Wow.
To defend something that is science, or to go against something that is science. It was just so wild. And I was like, okay, well, I was pretty sure I'm Black because, I do have basic human intelligence and common sense. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is true. But I live in Chicago. I rarely see my family in Louisiana. A lot of them are significantly older. My parents are significantly older for my parents. For parents of my age, I'm 30,
right.
And my dad is 74, 75. They're older and they have older siblings. So a lot of people are dead. And I didn't know my grandparents because they died. And it's just I don't have relationships with people. It's even though I have family, we visited, it still didn't click in my head because it was just, I was gaslit so strongly my whole life.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, now I know for sure. I know I'm Black. It doesn't really feel like it though, because I don't actually have blood family to confirm it, to validate it, to celebrate it. So I was just kind of like, well, I guess I have this new truth. I don't really know what to do with it, but I'd like to learn more about my actual culture. And so this is where it really gets exciting.
Oh.
So in November 2019, oh my God, I was talking to my husband. I'm like, but we need a new show. We need to watch something new. Let's watch Blackish because people like that. I've heard good things. Let's give it a go. Came out 5 years ago, but it's fine. And so we start watching it. And with every episode, I am in shock. My jaw is to the floor. I'm just like, oh my God, my parents talk like this. My parents act like this. My parents have these values. My family, oh my God, I really am Black. It was just whoa. And there was a very specific moment where the main character of the show, the dad, the husband, Dre, Black man, talks about his cousin, Junebug. And I'm like, wait a minute. Wait, what? I was like, my father has a cousin named Junebug. I'm like, that's weird. That has to be a Black thing. As a child, I was like, why is there someone in our family named Junebug? What in the actual? And so I called my friend Shalonda, who is Black, and I have very few Black people in my life. So I was like, I got to call someone who's going to give me the real tea. I was like, which, by the way, she knew I am Black, by the way. We met at my old job, and I was a few weeks in, and she and another coworker of ours, Angela, who's also Black, come up to me and they're like, hey, are you Black? And I was like, no. And they were like, okay, really? We thought you were a sister. And I was like, no. She knew. And so I call her and I'm like, I'm watching Blackish. I'm shook. I'm seeing so many similarities between this Black family and my family. The Junebug thing. Is this a Black thing? She goes, girl, if you have somebody in your family named Junebug, you are Black. Everyone knew. You just didn't know.
You just didn't know. Gosh. Wow.
It was so expansive. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is real. I thought I didn't grow up with a Black experience because, my parents demonized it, but it's I still did though. I still grew up eating collard greens, mustard greens, and ham hocks. Just the certain language and the certain mentalities. It was just oh my God, you tried to hide it, but it didn't fully work.
It was still there. Some of the cultural pieces were still there.
Yes.
I'm curious how it affected you, growing up knowing that you were intentionally kept from who you are and how getting that puzzle piece back has changed you.
Oh my God, what a beautiful question. So I call this my identity rebirth and my cultural renaissance. That's what I am calling this process, this journey, which will be continuing until I take my last breath. Mm-hmm. And it's been extremely empowering because it's really twisted and messed up to know that this happened to me. Although I'm not super shook because I did grow up in a very abusive and toxic household. Mm-hmm. So it's not shocking. This wasn't wow, I can't believe they did this. Of course I can believe it. So I'm not broken by that realization. It's actually very much empowered me because I'm like, okay, great. I get to write my own narrative now. I know exactly who I am, and I'm going to own it and champion it and celebrate it. And literally, I have Black girl magic within me. I didn't know that. And now I know, and I've had it this whole time. Now I'm just aware of it. And it's been really exciting and really fulfilling and really affirming. And I feel like every day is a new celebration. Now, with that said, this has been a very vulnerable experience. I basically put my Black coming out story, I put that in quotes, when this happened. And that was in March of last year. So like about a year ago, I put this on Facebook. And to my shock, tons of family members, extended family members came out the woodwork. People I don't know, people I've heard of but have never met, people I haven't seen since I was 5, didn't know they were on Facebook. I don't know how they saw this. And so many people came out, like my family, and they were like, I'm reading your story and I'm in tears. I had no idea your parents raised you this way. Oh, what do you mean you were raised white? You're Black. Your whole family is. It says Negro on your parents' birth certificate. Mine says white, which how? And they were just like, I had no idea. And it's like, wow. And I now have I've nurtured family relationships with my blood family, something I never thought I would do, something I was never interested in because I didn't care about my family, because my parents made them sound like horrible people, that they just were better than. And so I was like, okay, well, my parents tell me I'm better than you, so I am. So I'm not interested in you. It's just horrible. And the support has been so beautiful and wonderful and shocking, just because I'm not used to it and I didn't expect it. And it's been really great. And there has been a lot of negative and incorrect judgment from Black people, family and otherwise, who have taken in my journey. And that's been very hard, because it's like, of course, I want every Black person to champion me and celebrate me. And, you know, it's just like with anything, you're going to get good and bad. And it is very frustrating and upsetting when that happens. But, you know, that's just part of the process. It's part of the journey. It's part of this thing called life. The natural state of things is flux. So
yes, that's right. But
it's a very vulnerable experience.
Oh, incredibly vulnerable. And thank you for sharing. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to share that journey and just, you know, say it out loud, because there was so much shame involved in how you were raised around it. And then to be able to step into it and own those pieces and be like, I am now able to know myself better and know my history and feel like I have community, you know, whereas before it was such an isolating experience. And I'm actually curious, just to kind of take it to current events, you know, watching Meghan Markle and Prince Harry talk, did that bring things up for you? Because I see her, you know, sharing this, and you see people are like, I don't believe her experience. And then you hear others who say, nobody listened to me when I was looking for help either. Thank goodness somebody is speaking out about this and naming it, because naming it is scary and necessary. So all of this coverage with Meghan and Harry, what has that, you know, brought up for you? Does it resonate at all?
It feels so dystopian. I'm like, what is reality? Like, I can trust myself, but like, what is actually real? Like, am I in the upside down?
I know that. I've said that very same thing to myself multiple times. It just seems like so unreasonable that that people can't believe you when you say you're in pain. You know, there's so much, that's not real. I don't believe that. Or, you know, that's your problem if you have, it's like, actually, no, please hold space for me. I'm being vulnerable enough to tell you what is hurting me. And, you know, if I came to you with a big gash on my arm and I was bleeding out, you know, you'd help me because you could see it. Right. But if it's my words and you can't relate to that experience, it's not, you can't just dismiss it. Like, please listen to me. And I think that's a part of it. And even, you know, I know even for myself, when I've spoken up about things, it's been like, you know, you're supposed to not say the quiet part out loud. You're not supposed to call it out. You're not supposed to name it. And there's always consequences that have come along with that. But I think, you know, even with this interview, with those two. I feel like this is another shattered barrier where people are just like Me Too, just like other things where people are like, oh, I guess we're talking about this now. Okay.
Yeah.
Now maybe people will hear it. And there's so much trauma that comes with not being believed, not being heard, not being seen. And I appreciate you again. I mean, what a vulnerable thing to share. And I'm so sorry for the trauma and the hurt, because it's painful. It's so painful, especially when you're trying to find your own footing after being gaslit your whole life. Yeah. You're creating the you that is the most you, and you're getting not the support that you need. And so I'm so glad you have a partner that understands you and supports you, and you are there for each other. Yeah. And, wherever it is that you go, you're going, in my opinion, knowing that you're speaking your truth and you're saying it out loud, and you're going, in your honesty. And if people can't come along with that it's not because you did something wrong.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, just having you validate and affirm me is just, it means so much. It means the world. Even if just one person is willing to hold space, it creates a beautiful, abundant, expansive ripple effect. So thank you.
Wow. And you have just a, lovely, beautiful energy and soul, and you do so much for others. And so it's great that, you should have people reflect that back to you as well. Oh, so thank you for sharing that. So speaking of working with you, like, what are you working on now, and how can people, get in touch with you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for asking. So I still consider myself a coach. I am a coach. I don't do one-on-one coaching anymore because as a highly sensitive person, because I have a very acutely wired nervous system, that does not work for me. It's a little too draining for me. It's too much one-on-one. It's too much talking, too much responsibility. I'm not doing it. So I now consider myself a coach to the masses. And I do that in a few ways. One, through my podcast. It's called The Library of Alexandria. I teach on there once a week. They're short, concise episodes, all with different topics. So there's a way you can support me and learn from me. And what's another way? Oh, do you see this? This says Boundary Badass. It is mine. Thank you. I have an apparel shop, so you can support me that way. I have all kinds of apparel. I have dope-ass sweatsuits. Anyone who means business needs a dope-ass sweatsuit. And I have ones that say protect your peace. I have ones that say Boundary Badass. I have ones that say HSP. There's tanks, there's tees. Oh my God, there's all kinds of stuff.
So many things.
Put me there. I also sell candles, because who doesn't love a candle? And candles help you protect your peace. And they say protect your peace, and they come in lovely scents like library and rose petals. And
I love it. Love it.
Oh my God. So that is how you can support me now. And I'm someone who I really like to connect with people. So if people have questions, you can honestly just DM me on Instagram. I'm at Alexandria Thibodeaux. You can send me an email as well if you have questions. I will respond. It's free. I just want to connect with people and help where I can. I am currently working on a book of poetry. It's going to be amazing. You can buy that when it comes out. Please do.
I'd love to.
I'm working on a memoir, which will come out eventually, and you can buy that too.
I'm loving it. I love how you've taken what your gifts and talents are, and you've also paired them with the ways that your energy can stay intact as you still give. So good for you. Again, you're a boundary badass by, by figuring that out. Love that sweatshirt. Yeah, I just see such great things coming for you. And I'm really honored that you came on to tell your story. It's not an easy thing to do, but when you do, as hard as it is for some people to hear, minds and hearts can open, and some people will connect with you and say, you're telling my story, and I just want to cry because I feel like I'm seen and heard. So thank you for being that mirror to whoever is meant to listen to this episode today.
Oh God. Wow. I hope I can do that for someone. I really hope I can. There's not enough empathy to go around, and I want to offer it wherever I can. So again, thank you for affording me this opportunity to share my story. It means so much, especially as a Black woman. We don't get enough representation. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being on the show today. It means the world. Thank you for listening to Lighthouse Conversations. If this show resonates with you, it would mean so much to have you rate, review, and share. Don't forget to follow us at chellycanales.com and on social media.